Hi everyone, and welcome to another Flight Data Sim product preview. Today we're going to be looking at Winwing's full-size replication of the 737 MCP, which is their PAP3 panel with the optional mag switch upgrade to the autothrottle. We'll also look at their recently released 3N and 3M PDC panels, which replicate the EFIS controls of the Boeing 737. These three items can be combined to apply an exact replication of the real 737 Glareshield, which is exactly what I've done with my setup. We'll take a closer look at the panels and then concentrate on the practicality and real-world use of both the MCP and EFIS panels based on my 14 years of experience flying the 737 series as a training captain, examiner and instructor. To do this as realistically as possible, we'll be departing from Lisbon in Portugal in the PMDG 737 Microsoft Flight Simulator, flying to the west over the Atlantic where we can explore both the 737 EFIS panel and MCP before returning for an ILS approach. So here is the combined 3N and 3M EFIS panels along with the PDC PAP3 MCP panel attached to my desk. The setup took approximately an hour and I used the included stands which come with extremely adhesive double-sided sticky tape, and this panel is firmly attached to my desk. In fact, it isn't going to be moving anywhere. There is also an optional clamp available to purchase if you wish to attach it to your desk in a different way. The EFIS panels are sold separately but come with all the necessary attachments, and it's fully compatible with the MCP. The top Glareshield element of the EFIS panel is interchangeable, which allows you to attach it to either side of your MCP. The 3N PDC is based off the NG EFIS panel and the 3M PDC, the 737 Maxes. They're almost identical in functionality, apart from the 737 MAX EFIS panel, which has a separate VSD button, and the range button can be spun indefinitely. All the panels are powered individually by USB-C, which I've connected to my powered USB hub. Now, once set up and plugged in, you need to download Winwing's in-house software, SimApp Pro, which allows the panel to communicate with the simulator. There are several aircraft profiles available, including the PMDG 737. I didn't actually have to configure any of the buttons at all, and I was set up and running in the 737 in a few minutes. The build quality far exceeded my expectations. There is a real tactile feel to the EFIS and MCP buttons, like what you get with the real aircraft. One of the most impressive features is the almost zero latency when rotating the knobs, meaning that each individual rotation will update the respective displays as per the real aircraft. So now I've shown you the panels in detail, let's go flying in the PMDG 737. So here we are in Microsoft Flight Simulator in the PMDG 737-800. As mentioned earlier, we are in Lisbon, Portugal, live time, live weather, and we're going to simply depart on this SID which takes us to the west, play around with the MCP and EFIS panels before returning for an ILS approach. So having a little play with the MCP before departure, as I mentioned earlier, the response and tactile feeling of all the buttons is really realistic. So if I zoom in on the MCP here, you can see if I rotate the heading bug, it's instant. It registers each individual click and updates it instantly. There's no latency at all. So all the rotation knobs are great. You've got the flight director switches, the master light moves around as per the real aeroplane, and updated on the PMDG 737 as well. And the autothrottle, if I engage and disconnect it using my thrustmaster yoke, you can see it's got the magnetic feature to instantly disconnect. It's so satisfying to see it all work as per the real aeroplane. But anyway, look, we'll engage the autothrottle, engage heading select as it's a heading select departure. We'll start the timing. I'll add some thrust as well to 40%, and you'll see me use the autopilot as per real life. Right, engines are spooling up, stabilised, we'll push toga, set takeoff thrust. Alright, takeoff thrust sets, indications normal.
$80.
80 knots, we'll release the forward pressure. Hands off the thrust levers, rotate, up we go, use rudder to maintain centre line with that left crosswind, and we're airborne. Gears coming up. Perfect, slight issue with the gear, but that's the usual issue I have with my controls in Microsoft Flight Simulator. Great. We'll engage heading select. Heading select's engaged. Now, when we engage the autopilot, you want to make sure there's no input on the controls. Select Command A, and always verify the FMA. And now we can bug up. And you'll see that M1 is engaged and is illuminated on the MCP. Now the aircraft will lower the nose above the little white bug on the PFD, so we can select flaps 1. And we'll select flaps up. Great. So once the flaps are retracted, I'm going to give myself continuous climb to flight level 80. So flaps up, no lights. I'll bug 80. And we'll just rotate the camera slightly so you can see me manipulate the EFIS panel. I can now set standard set. I can press RST to clear the MFRA. We're passing through 8 for flight level 80. We can then complete the after takeoff checklist. So after takeoff checklist is complete, we'll engage VNAV. So we get VNAV speed as the aircraft pitches for 250 knots and M1 stays engaged. And as we're also approaching our cleared level, we can consider selecting another pitch mode. So we'll go vertical speed. That will open up the vertical speed window and engage MCP speed. So you can then bug the speed as required. So approaching 1 to go, I'll reduce to 1,000 feet per minute and we'll leave the speed bugged at 250 knots. So we're still on the radar heading, so we'll go down here to manipulate the FMC and we'll route direct to 30, bring that to the top and execute. Being a 737 and not an Airbus, you need to remember to engage LNAV. So we'll select LNAV, and LNAV has engaged, and we'll now follow the lateral routing in the FMC. So out acquire, and as soon as we're at 80, you'll see out hold enunciate, which it has done. And we can keep the heading bug updated as we turn to ensure if ATC wants us to maintain present heading, we can simply push heading select. So, MCP, very, very nice. We've used the modes on departure as per real life. Let's talk about some of the buttons on the MCP. So, moving from left to right, you have the course display. You have 2 courses, and we need to typically update those for all approaches. So we need to set the final approach track for an ILS on both the left and right side. So for the ILS approach, we've just departed from in Lisbon, ILS runway 02, the course is 025. So 025 is set here, we'll update 025 on the right hand side. Flight director mode, we leave on for all stages of flights. We turn them off if you want to fly raw data, which at my operator isn't approved, but we can recycle them on non-precision approaches to remove flight director guidance as applicable. Now these 2 buttons, M1 and speed, I have never actually pushed in the real aircraft. They engage as per pitch mode. We just verify the status on the FMA, but I've actually never had to push them. The auto throttle switch, again, we engage as per SOP when we line up on the runway, and as I already demonstrated, you can either physically push it, it's quite hard, you would never really do that on the real aeroplane, and re-engage it, always verify the FMA status of MCP speed, or most commonly, you can disconnect the auto throttle on the thrust lever. Now, I've got my thrust lever connected, but just to show you on the screen, if I push this, here, it's a bit hard to get the click spot right. There you go, you can see it's disconnected the auto throttle. That's such an awesome feature. I'd highly recommend that upgrade. Oh look, there you go, there's muscle memory. I'm so used to pushing the button in the aircraft on the screen, I now need to remember I've got the real MCP. Moving across then, we have 2 pitch modes to look at here, and then VS later. We've got VNAV level change. So we have flight level 100 in the FMC here, which is our sort of cruise for this little trial flight. So we'll set flight level 100 on the MCP. Out hold is engaged, that's fantastic. And then we can select VNAV. The aircraft will now climb. The speed window blanks because it's following the speed in the FMC, and we have N1 and VNAV speed on the FMAs. One thing to highlight is we're obviously manipulating the PAP3 panel and MCP, but it's so important that you always monitor your FMAs to get the correct guidance. Now, we don't usually use this in climb, but if I select level change, you'll notice that the pitch FMA is changed to MCP speed. You can then bug your speed that you want to climb at with the climb thrust maintained at the target of M1. But because we're approaching our cleared level quickly, out acquire has engaged, as has MCP speed. You also have the option to open the speed window with VNAV engaged with speed intervent, which we'll do when we reach flight level 100. So here we are at flight level 100, just to demonstrate speed intervent in the cruise. We can select VNAV. The cruise speed is 250 knots, but if I open speed intervent, the speed window will open and then you can bug whatever speed you want to fly. But we'll go back to the target cruise speed of 250 knots by closing the speed window. So looking at the roll modes, we have LNAV, the current engaged mode. You have heading select as well, which is quite simply engaged, and then you bug the heading you want to fly, and then you have the angular bank selector. So if you set that to 10 degrees, the angular bank will be 10 degrees, and you can see that updating correctly as well. This is superb. Just that's my word of the day, by the way, guys. Superb. As per the real aeroplane, working really nicely. We'll go back to LNAV. Vorlock you use primarily to intercept a localizer. In the olden days, without FMCs, when we used to fly along radials on airways, I say we, I never used to myself, but you can use Vorlock to intercept VOR radial as well. The next button, the approach mode to intercept an ILS. So just moving across to the right hand side of the MCP, when you get into the descent phase, you could lower a lower level push out intervent to descend early, which I'll demonstrate in streams moving forward. And we've already looked at the vertical speed mode as well, and you can simply dial the target vertical speed that's required. Now, moving on to the autopilot commands, you have several ways of disconnecting the autopilot. The primary way of doing it is on the control column, pushing the autopilot disengage switch, but you can also push the button. So if I push that, it'll disengage the autopilot. We can re-engage the automation as well. The disengage bar here I have never actually used in the real aeroplane. It's there if you have, let's say, a failure of the system and the autopilot disconnect button doesn't work on the control column, but by pushing that bar down you can also disconnect the autopilot too. To re-engage it you do need to rearm the system, and in that case reselect Command A. Next we have the infamous control wheel steering buttons. In 15 years I have never selected control wheel steering on the 737 series. It essentially allows you to manipulate the autopilot using the control column. The only sort of procedure where we'd use it in anger is in severe turbulence, where it's difficult to maintain altitude and we want to hold an attitude. We would consider engaging control wheel steering. So we've covered the MCP. We're now going to take a look at the EFIS panel. We're going to use the left EFIS panel based off the 737NG. The right one, I have the MAX one. I will use that in the iFly 737 MAX in some live streams in the future, but the functionality is almost identical. Now, starting at the top, we have the Barrow minimum selector. So at the moment we've selected Barrow, and we have the MFRA for departure, but what you could do here is set the minimums for your approach. So we're going to be flying ILS approach runway 02, a Cat 1 ILS, and the minimums is 530 feet. So how it works is, I actually have a YouTube short on this from the real aeroplane, but you can do little pushes like this to set 1 foot increments, or you can hold it down to set the minimums quickly. So it's really nice to now have the ability to set your minimums as quickly as you would do in real life. So we'll get to 530. The only difference between this and the real aeroplane is when you do flicks like this, it does 10 foot increments in the real aircraft. In the PMDG 737, it only does 1 foot increments, so you've got to do lots of little rotations like this to get to the exact minimums, in this case 530 feet. You'd obviously rotate that to the left to set your radio minimums for an auto land on a Cat 2, Cat 3 approach. Moving across, we have the flight path vector. Again, I seldom use this, and you have the ability to say where the aircraft is going. In this case, it's level, so you can see the FPV is on the horizon, and with the wind coming from the right, we're actually moving left of the present attitude as well. Again, I never use that feature. If you're flying in Russia or China, you've got the ability to select meters, which appears above the feet on the PFD. Again, never used that as well. And then we get to the Barrow minimum selector. So you can go to hectopascals. We've got the standard obviously set now which is 1013. If I push that, you can see you can now set the QNH, which if you move this, it'll manipulate the altitude and we'll go back to standard. And if you're in America, you can select inches of mercury here to set your pressure setting, in this case 2, 9 and 9 and 2. So go back to standard and set hectopascals. Next we have the VOR and ADF switches. You have 3 positions. They are typically defaulted to VOR and VOR1 and VOR2. You can move them to the off position, so you get no information regarding any VORs, and you can select ADF1. All the 737NG series aircraft, as far as I know, only have one ADF receiver, and on our aircraft we have a little INOP sticker which you can see is replicated in the PMDG 737. So selecting that, we won't do anything. You'll see the ADF2 flag has come up. So I'll leave it set to VOR, which is the default position. Let's now move on to the ND display or controls. So the default position is map, which you can see is here, and that allows you to manipulate the ND accordingly. Just get yourself into a better position here. And this is the default position we use about 98% of the time. VOR and approach I have never used. Again, I'd use this if I lost an FMC to sort of get some conventional displays with the HSI. Now, another neat feature on the EFIS is the ability to go to plan, and then you can use the FMC to step through each waypoint, making sure it's as per the plan. We'll go back to map. You then have the center display button, so if you push that, you get the center display, but another push will bring the VSD, or vertical situation display, which is very useful on the approach to get a increased situational awareness regarding terrain on the approach as well. Moving across, we then have the range display, so you can simply set the range on the ND, so decreasing the range in this case to 40 miles, 20 miles, you get all the information display. And this button, TFC, gives you traffic on the ND. It's always on by default, but if you actually were to turn it off, you can get no traffic information, which is a bit foolish. So just approaching Elnub, we're going to make a left turn eastbound back towards Lisbon, and whilst we're doing that, we'll talk about the remaining EFIS controls. So on the bottom you have your map switches, 7 in total, and the first one we'll discuss is the weather radar, so always on when lining up the runway, and then we turn it off vacating the runway. Next you have STA, which is short for station, so that will show you all the FMC database navigational aids, so long as the range is less than 40 miles, of course over the Atlantic there's no nav aids here. Waypoint, if you press that, will again show you all the waypoints in the navigational database. That'll again only display if the range is 40 miles or less. We don't have these on by default, but they're quite useful if you want to build an approach in the FMC to locate those waypoints. Again, always on by default, which I forgot to do prior to departure, is airports. Again, that will display all the airports in the FMC navigational database. Now, if I select data, you'll get additional information. For example, at Elnub, we pass at 11:53 Zulu. Now, if you select POS, you get all the positional information from the FMC as well. So this is derived from IRS, GPS and VOR bearing stations, and the little symbol that displays shows you the predicted position of the aircraft. Now over time you'll notice the IRS will drift, and we can do alignments under sectors to increase navigational accuracy, but with GPS now your position is pretty accurate. Right now our AMP is 0.05. Last button then is the terrain display. Now unfortunately you don't have the ability to have terrain and weather radar information, so if I increase the range to around 40 miles, leave the terrain display on, it'll sort of do a scan. This isn't from the weather radar, but you can see the little green items there are terrain information available, so really useful obviously if the terrain is high or mountainous for building situation awareness. But you can only select, as I mentioned, weather or terrain. So we've pretty much covered all of the modes on the MCP and the EFIS panel. What I'm going to do now is position the aircraft on base leg so you can watch me manipulate the MCP and controls as we land the 737 back into Lisbon. So welcome back guys, I've just levelled off at 4,000 feet, and we'll imagine HC has cleared us to descend a little bit below the platform altitude of Pesek, so we'll set 3,000 feet And you'll have watched my streams before, a lot of you, and you would have heard of VS to finesse. So I want to use vertical speed as a pitch mode. Now, because it's armed, all I need to do is simply rotate the wheel to start my descent. We'll just do a gradual descent of 500 feet per minute. We need to start reducing the speed, so let's just increase the range, or decrease the range on the ND, and we'll bug the up speed. And we'll add a little bit of speed brake to add some drag onto the aircraft. And we'll just, again, keep finely tuning the vertical speed to ensure that we maintain a CDA. Good, so Imagine 80 gave us another clearance onto an intercept heading for base leg, so fly radar heading of 065 degrees, heading select, descend to an altitude of the platform at Nevto. Well, there isn't one really because we're already on the ILS. Well, let's say they said descend to 2,500 feet and you're cleared ILS approach runway 02. So we have correct sensing, the localizers on the right hand side, and the glide slope is below. We can arm approach. Approach is armed, and you can see Vorlock and glide slope is in white on the FMA. So approaching 10 miles, I'll select flaps 1. We'll bug the speed. That's the heading bug, don't do that. That's flap 1. And we'll go straight to flap 5 because we're almost on the glide slope. Speed checked. Flap 5, match the speed. Localizer alive, localizer capture. We'll set runway heading 025 degrees. And we're approaching the flap 5 speed. We can now start stowing the speed brake. Next thing that's going to happen is glide slope capture. And once the glide slope has been captured, we can set the missed approach altitude, which is climb straight ahead to flight level 60. Glide slope capture, flight level 60 is set. Right, we're approaching 5 miles. Let's start configuring to land. So gear down, flap 15, match the speed, and we can now complete the landing checklist of flaps. We have start switches in continuous, recall checked, speed brake is armed green lights, landing gear down 3 green, auto brake is set to 3, holding on the landing flap, speed checked. Select flap 30, match the speed. The headwind component is less than 10 knots, so we'll go VREF plus 5. There we are. So flaps, we are planning on 30. We have 30 here with the green light, and the landing lights are on. Landing checklist is complete. Okay, now it's time to have some fun, so we'll disconnect the auto throttle. There we are, you can hear the switch clicking off and disconnect the autopilot. There we are, autopilot's disconnected. So we've got a little bit of a crosswind from the left, so decrab, a little bit of right rudder, aileron into wind. Still following the flight directives. Thrust setting approximately 57% for our gross rate of around 60 tons. So make changes as required. Just watch that rate of descent. It's a little excessive, 1,000 feet per minute. But we are showing 2 reds, 2 whites. Add a bit of thrust to get back above VREF.
500.
There we are. Speed is recovering. Checked. A little bit gusty as well. The wind's changing all over the place, which can make controlling the aircraft a little bit more difficult. Just remember to fly the aeroplane, put it where you want it to go. Right. Bit of strange Microsoft Flight Sim yawing moment coming in. That's checked. 3 whites. Keep descending. Don't go too crazy. Continue. Keep descending. Back on profile. Keep coming down.
50, 40, 30.
Check. Close. A little bit of right rudder. Aileron into wind, which you don't really need in Microsoft Flight Sim. Bit floaty. Oh, what a butter. Speed brakes up. Reverses. We'll go idle reverse. And gently lower the nose. Manual braking. There we are. Auto brake disarm. 100 knots. 80 knots. 60 knots. We can cancel reverse. And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lisbon. So now I've vacated the runway, I can select the flaps all the way to up. We can stow the speed brake, and the captain's actions would be to turn off the weather radar, which I've just done on the EFIS panel. And regarding the cleanup on the MCP, the actions would be to turn the flight directors off. we set the IS max speed to 100 knots, and we set the altitude plus 100 feet. So this concludes my product review of the Winwing PAP 3, 3N and 3M PDC panels. I hope you found it interesting and learned something new. Now, Winwing did send me these panels free of charge to review, but I have been given free rein to explain exactly what I think about the product. But I think the preview speaks for itself. I am genuinely really impressed with what they have reproduced with regards to the MCP and EFIS panel. It genuinely feels and functions in a very similar manner to the real world 737 MCP, and this will be a new permanent feature to my home cockpit setup. Now, if you are interested in these panels for your home virtual cockpit, I have left some links in the video description below. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest content, and I'll see you on the next tutorial livestream very soon.